everyone. I'm certified natural healthcare practitioner Erin Thole, and I have Colton Thayer from Waylab with me again today. And we are diving a little bit deeper into all of this insulin resistance and glucose imbalances, HbA1c numbers, all of that good stuff. And today we're talking about your insulin numbers, HbA1c numbers in relation to blood pressure and how those two things are related. Hi, Colton. How are you doing?
Good, Erin. How are you doing?
I am good. I'm good. I'm excited to dive into this one. So, blood pressure and insulin resistance. I read this interesting thing in this study that I kind of want to share with everyone because it really kind of connects the dots in how things are really looped together, right? So you never, like we've talked about before, like you never have just insulin resistance. Like there's always other things, other factors, other health concerns that are going along with that. So this study, and this is from the National Institutes of Health, their website, it says insulin resistance and hypertension, high blood pressure, are the components of metabolism, metabolic syndrome, and often coexist. So clinical studies have shown that 50% of people with high blood pressure have glucose intolerance. So if you have high blood pressure first, you have a 50-50 chance of also developing insulin resistance issues. Whereas if you have insulin resistance issues first, you have an 80% chance of then developing high blood pressure issues. So neither of those statistics are great, right? So if you have high blood pressure first, you're very likely to have high insulin issues. And if you have high insulin issues first, then you're very likely, more likely, 80% likelihood of developing high blood pressure as well. And that's just because of that connection between the blood pressure, kidneys, mineral levels, and how things are working within the cell, like what's able to get into the cell. So in consultations with clients or in working with clients, a lot of times I talk about a hormone called leptin, which is like your master hormone, right? It's kind of like the puppeteer for all of your
Yep.
other hormones. And it is a hormone that's made in the fat cells and talks directly to the brain to tell the brain whether to speed up metabolism, slow down metabolism, increase energy, increase hunger, decrease hunger, all those different things in relation to our body composition and how we feel in our body. It controls your thyroid hormones, your adrenals, like literally everything. So people become leptin resistant before they become insulin resistance. So by the time insulin resistance sets in, you've
hmm
already been leptin resistant for at least, five,
Yeah.
10 years or so, like quite a while. And so this is just kind of like the domino effect of events that happens. So if those cells are just becoming rubbery and stiff and not allowing that insulin in or allowing other hormones in, it's all
Mhm.
kind of stemming back to that leptin resistance issue. And then we kind of get like this cascade of other issues kind of ensuing
Mhm.
afterwards. And then that's kind of messing then with, if your metabolism is off, then you're holding on to more body weight, and then that can increase your blood pressure and things like that. And then your salt levels can get all wonky and things of that nature. So all these things are just really interwoven and interconnected.
Mhm.
Should I show the
Yeah,
chart?
show that chart. Yeah.
HbA1c chart? So this kind of gives us a little bit of a better understanding of how these things are kind of all interconnected. So like we talked about in an earlier video, the HbA1c numbers and the vast majority of your lab results these days, especially for like hormones, for women when it comes to like perimenopause and menopause and things like that, and your thyroid hormones, it's been this way forever, is those reference ranges at the lab that you're getting back on your panels that you're getting, that is more often than not the average, right? So that's like the average person that's getting tested at that lab. They're falling between these numbers. So we've decided, the collective we have decided that, this is the reference range that we're going to go off of. So diabetes used to be diagnosed right here around this 6%. You'd be kind of slapped with that, diabetes label. Well, now they're kind of raising that up to, 7%, 8%, something like that. They're calling 6% like pre-diabetic or metabolic syndrome, where you're kind of teetering on the edge here. And the reason that it's moved is simply because the population is becoming more and more metabolically dysfunctional, right? So now the average has shifted. So now we're calling this, this new reference range. This is the new reference range based on the average person. Well, I don't know about you, but if I'm getting tested and getting all this lab work done, I don't want to be compared to the average person. I want to be compared to what is healthy. Like, give me those reference ranges, So that's what this is for. So these are, kind of grading you on where your HbA1c levels are. And HbA1c is just the amount of sticky sugar in your blood in the average of like a 3-month time period. So you only really want to get your HbA1c level checked every 3 months or so, because otherwise you're not really going to see much fluctuation there. So we don't want a ton of sticky sugar in our blood. Not good. Very inflammatory, which can lead to, we're talking about blood pressure. So it can lead to artery dysfunction and circulatory issues and inflammation within the circulatory system and things like that, to have all that inflammatory sugar just in your bloodstream, right? So you'll even see that here around that 6% circulatory issues, like and this isn't the only symptoms and conditions, but it's kind of a list of some of the ones that we see most commonly. But we really want to be, 4.5%, maybe pushing 5% or something like that, but definitely not above that, the higher HbA1c level is, the more you're going to have, accelerated aging, mood discrepancies, highs and lows, energy highs and lows, cravings, like things like that. So we want to get down here. We don't want to have it too low. We're in kind of like this is kind of like an anorexic kind of state, but right around this, 4.5, 4.2 at the very lowest, is a good place to be, So this is really what we really want to drive home to people, is that if your labs just say that you're normal, you're in the normal range, there's so many people walking around being told that they're normal and they feel like trash.
Yeah.
So
it's not good.
It's not in your head. Like, you feel the way that you feel, it's just that the reference ranges have moved to accommodate what is common. But common and normal are not synonyms. So something can be common and very much so not normal. So just wanting to, really drive that home to people. So when you are working with someone with blood pressure issues that also has, high glucose levels, they have diabetes, they're, pre-diabetic, things like that, what are the kind of the things that you're looking for, and what are you like, how are you working with those issues?
Um, Obviously, it's nice to see, how did this chain of events occur? What happened first? Was it diabetes? Was it the hypertension? Because a lot of these people, when they come to me, they're already at the point of kidney disease or kidney failure, right? So you got to kind of peel back the onion, see where it started. Um, but I guess what I'm seeing a lot of is people are just stressed. They're not eating right. They're, sitting down all day. They're not moving around. They're not being active and just kind of wasting away and just feeding into the cycle, which it's kind of sad. And um, there's more that we have to do than just herbal medicine. But you got to figure out, okay, what medications are you on? What is, do you have heart issues on top of it that we need to address? Um, but I guess when we're looking at, I mean, just look at the big picture. What's going on with the person?
Mhm.
Do we got to work on blood pressure? Do we got to work on kidneys on top of that? But I guess sorry, that's kind of not a
Well,
clear.
I just
There's
feel
a
like,
lot. There's a
yeah,
lot.
it's a lot. So like these things are so interwoven, so we have our blood sugar issue, insulin resistance, and then blood pressure, which is going to be creating a lot of inflammation with both of those things are creating a lot of inflammation within the circulatory system and kind of putting the heart, at risk,
Mhm.
essentially. But then just looking at like, okay, what are the root causes of blood pressure issues, right? So mineral deficiency, electrolyte imbalances, huge. Also, do you have like a magnesium to calcium, like your magnesium to calcium to phosphorus, like ratio is way off? Because a lot of times people's blood pressure issues is simply like, hey, you just need some magnesium and you'll be
Mhm.
fine.
Mhm.
Kind of issue if it's just, especially if they're young
Yeah.
and they're really active and stuff like that, and they don't have a weight issue and they don't have glucose and insulin issues, and it's kind of like, well, what the heck is going on? Well, a lot of times if we do a micronutrient panel, then we'll see like, oh man, like your magnesium levels completely in the toilet. Let's just give you some magnesium and you'll be fine.
Mhm.
So there's different ends of the spectrum, I guess. But then also you have to look at food sensitivities that play into
Oh yeah.
inflammation, that increase the blood pressure and the heart rate and all those other things. Like sometimes people will be like, I eat this and then my heart is like racing. Well, don't eat that. Like you're
Hmm.
sensitive to it, like something you're having an
Like a
inflammatory
reaction
response, to
response.
that kind of thing. And then stress and the nervous system. And we've talked about in another video how, high insulin levels, high glucose levels will automatically just overstimulate the nervous system. And that in and of itself can cause high blood pressure. If there's stress within the body and the nervous system is constant, you're not in a parasympathetic state, your body is just thinking that you're running from the lion 24/7 kind of thing. That'll cause your blood pressure to be high. And then your glucose and insulin is already high, and it's just kind of like this cycle, more or less. So these two things go hand in hand for a lot of people. Yes. And then like the dietary components and weight loss, and people having sedentary lifestyles and things like that. Like these are all conditions that we do to ourselves. Like these are lifestyle conditions. These are not things that we're typically seeing like 100 years
Hmm.
ago. We now have all of these metabolic conditions that are conditions of our lifestyle and the things that we are doing, to ourselves. And then I think we had talked about, not on video, but in a different conversation that you and I had had, the effects of like food dyes and chemicals,
Oh yeah.
and additives and artificial this, that, and the other thing that are all being pumped into our food supply now, and how our bodies are reacting to those things, and it increases your, inflammation levels, and then that can increase your blood pressure and increase, it has an effect on your insulin levels, like all these chemicals, especially like artificial sweeteners. They actually completely mess with your insulin and glucose levels and can actually make diabetes way worse. And they
Yeah.
make you crave more sugar, So, all of these chemicals that are being added into everything and pesticides and herbicides, some of those are being shown to have, metabolic effects, not only on the nervous system and the endocrine system, which we've known for a long time. They still haven't taken them out, but they can actually cause, issues with your blood sugar and your insulin, which insulin is a hormone. So anything that is an endocrine disruptor,
Hmm.
oftentimes people I feel like think about that as like a sex hormone issue.
Yeah.
Like it's messing up your estrogen and testosterone and progesterone and things like that. But insulin is a hormone too,
Hmm.
So if it's disturbing the endocrine system, it's gonna mess with your insulin, it's gonna mess with your HbA1c, how your body reacts to sugar, how it holds on to sugar, processes sugar, all those different things. So all of that can, blood pressure, man, there's so many people that have high blood pressure and are on multiple blood pressure medications, like 3, 4 blood pressure medications. It's like, why are you continuing to be prescribed these medications?
Yeah.
Like that obviously aren't working, and adding another one isn't fixing the issue. You don't have a blood pressure medication deficiency. And a lot of times those medications, if you look at the
Hmm.
drug and the vitamin mineral
Hmm.
interactions, a lot of those medications are actually depleting the minerals, the vitamins that balance out your blood pressure and your glucose levels and your insulin in the first place. And so it's really like driving you further into the hole. And they completely destroy the gastrointestinal tract. Like when I see people come to me and they're on, 3, 4 blood pressure medications, I'm like, okay, so your doctor is trying to make you bleed out from the inside, I guess. Like, why? Why? Like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Like
Yeah.
why are they putting you on this many medication? And it's not the fault of the patient,
No.
like they're trying to get a resolution. They're trying to like fix this issue and they're putting their trust in their doctor to fix the issue. Well, my doctor said, but it's like
Hmm.
we need to dig a little bit deeper into cause and effect and not just slap this band-aid on there that doesn't really hold anything in place anyway, and then just hope for a different result. So, um, I think we've had some really good, like we've done a lot with like the Zinzino, the balance oil, like getting people's omega status in range. That 3-to-1 ratio or less is vital to your blood pressure as well, just as much so as your mineral status, that magnesium to calcium ratio. So we've worked a lot with that. And then there's some herbs that we've also done to help get people into range with their blood pressure as we're really like nurturing their body and helping the body to get rebalanced and stuff like that. Like these herbs can help to correct a lot of issues, and then eventually we don't need the herbs anymore, as everything's just kind of like falling into place and inflammation is getting under control and stuff like that. But do you want to talk about some of those herbals that you have available?
Yeah. So when we look at blood pressure, some people, you get a lot of people that are like, oh, it's genetic, it runs in my family. My dad had it, my mom had it, my grandma, uncle, whoever, right? And I don't always believe it. I think, you and I were talking about it the other week. What are you eating? Are you guys all eating the same stuff? And
Yeah.
just stressing out. I don't know, but there is some truth to it where there is some people that just genetically produced more vasoconstricting chemicals in the bloodstream, and when you do that, blood vessels tighten, your arteries tighten, they constrict, and blood pressure goes up. So we've used Breeze to relax that, But when we're talking about calming down the kidneys, the adrenals, so we're not producing those chemicals, we've been using our formula Sinum, um, and we are seeing some pretty game-changing improvements for a lot of people where they've had blood pressure issues for past decade, 20 years, whatever, and they're taking it, and guess what? Blood pressure's going down, and a lot of them, they're working with their doctors to get off of, their whatever cocktail of blood pressure meds. Make sure, you're doing it safely, but
Yes.
if it's not helping you, um, and it's not really doing you any services, like no point in just continuing with it. But obviously, you want to work with your doctor to do that. Make sure you're doing it safe. But yeah, I've seen a lot of those, even those diuretics that they give people,
Yeah.
really, really taxing to the kidneys, where somebody was already at a 40 GFR. Guess what? Blood pressure was up. Maybe they had a cold, started getting a little edema. They said, hey, double the Lasix. Some of the swelling went down, but guess what? So did their kidney function. It got cut in half in like a week. So,
So going from like 40 to 20 GFR.
yeah, I mean, 15, you're not every time, it does depend on your creatinine, but 15 is kind of the staple for you're in stage 5
I was
kidney.
just going to say, let's give some reference points here. So, like, that's a number that kind of determines what stage of kidney failure you're
Yeah.
in. And so, once you're down that low, like getting, closer to like 80 to 100 is like optimal. And so, then once you're down to, 20 or something like that, like you're
Good to
very
go.
much into kidney failure, going on dialysis, like things like that.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Yeah. Freaky. You don't
that's
want to get there. And the whole point of this is to help people to not get there.
yeah.
You don't want to get that low, right? So if we can work on the blood pressure, work on the blood sugar, work on the kidneys, whatever you got to do,
Mhm.
just keep yourself as healthy as you can and do what you
Yeah.
can.
And a lot of it's, gonna fall back to diet, which I help people with a lot. And yeah, that the high blood sugar and high blood pressure is just
Mhm.
inflammation city. In terms of the genetics, there are two genes that will kind of, give us an insight into if someone truly is genetically predisposed to, higher blood pressure in relation to their sodium intake.
Mhm.
So as long as people are using, because you need sodium, like it's an important mineral. We don't want to go on a sodium-free diet. That's
Yeah,
not
no.
a good idea. And there's actually a ton of research that's coming out that's showing like once the sodium drops super, super low, the body starts trying to compensate with sugar and increasing
Ooh,
those glucose and insulin levels. And so, because your body's trying to like find that homeostasis, and it's like, I don't have this mineral that I need, sodium's an electrolyte, like you absolutely need it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so table salt is straight up poison. Like we want to avoid that. But doing like your sea salt and things like that, super, super important for keeping those electrolytes and those minerals balanced and keeping your blood pressure balanced. There's something called soul water, which is where you soak like a fourth a cup of sea salt in a quart of water, and you just like put it in the sun, like let it sit in your windowsill that gets a lot of sun for 24 hours. It just helps to like charge and really activate those
Yeah.
minerals in the salt
They're
water.
ion,
Yeah.
it's
And then you
basically
just
like a battery. You're charging it up.
exactly. And then you just take like a tablespoon a day, and it works amazingly well to help balance out blood pressure, energy levels, like all of that good stuff. Um, so when people are like, "Oh, I'm genetically, everyone in my family has high blood pressure and stuff like that," it's like, okay, well, then everyone in your family is aggravating that mutated gene.
Yeah.
Because I am sure that if we go a couple generations back, people didn't have blood pressure issues
No. I
like they
mean, their
have.
blood pressure would go up, if they're running from a tiger.
Yeah, like you're super stressed out about something, like that's a natural response. I mean, there's some people that only have high blood pressure when they're in the doctor's office, you know? And
Mhm.
that's,
Goat syndrome.
yeah, it's a very common thing. Doesn't mean that you need a blood pressure medication. It just means that you're stressed out when you're in the doctor's office because of all the tests and, poking and prodding and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But the genetic thing oftentimes is, sorry, an excuse.
Yeah.
Like there's tons of things that are you're genetically kind of predisposition to possibly acquiring, but those genes only express themselves in a negative way if that switch is flipped.
Hmm.
So don't flip the switch, or if the switch has already been flipped, then we need to figure out what flipped it. Is
Hmm.
it diet? Is it stress? Is it toxicity? Is it a combination of all these things? And then turn it back off, So this is the study of epigenetics. Like you can totally manipulate your genes. You can't change your genes, but you can manipulate them. So hope
Right.
that helps some people. I think it's an empowering thing, that you're not a victim of your circumstances. Like you can really take charge of it and change it. So
You can do something about it.
what was that?
You can do something about it, right? It's
Exactly.
empowering. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So I hope this helps people understand blood sugar in relation to blood pressure and also just blood pressure in relation to everything else too. I think we talked about a lot of things. So if people want to get a hold of you, Colton, try out some herbs or just kind of pick your brain on what would be right for them, how do they get a hold of you?
You can give me a call. We can set up a consultation. My phone number is 612-808-9235.
Perfect. And then if anybody wants to set up a free phone consultation with me, they can shoot me an email at thole.erin@gmail.com, or I'll have my Calendly link below where you can schedule your free consultation there as well.
Perfect.
So thanks for being here.